Have you wondered why there's so many containers on the road? And did you know that half of them are actually empty? Imagine the environmental costs of empty containers clogging the highways. Today, we're going to talk about that. I'm Hansi, and welcome to the Climate Conversations.
We at Rain Matter are learning about how climate change is affecting you and me, and more importantly, what we can do about it. Join us as we speak with people who are working on solutions for India. Welcome to the Climate Conversations.
That's exactly what a startup called MatchLog is trying to fix. In a nutshell, MatchLog reduces the dry runs in the container transport segment of the logistics industry. In today's episode, we meet Dhruv Taneja, one of the 4 co-founders of MatchLog. We started with an understanding of the logistics industry.
We built out a transport execution system. It's a TES platform. So anything which has to be delivered from point A to point B involves logistics, right? It's a very, very simple norm and more pertaining to cargo. So we have warehousing, you have trucking, you have the clearance part of it, the storage part of it, the packing, unpacking part of it. Everything goes into the logistics space.
Since logistics is a cost, we want to reduce it as a proportion of GDP rather than increase it. Road transport makes up 70%, including the export-import related container segment, which is basically between a port on the coast and a factory somewhere between 100 to 200 kilometers inland. If it needs to be transported beyond, it goes by rail.
We have 12 major ports and about, 30 minor ports. And with the way things are coming along, the number is going to increase. Smaller ports are coming up, transshipment ports are coming up. But again, if you look at it, about 70% of India's volume is fixed on the west coast. That's where the cargo on the west coast. So you're talking about Mundra, Hazira and Nhava Sheva as the 3 ports which handle 70% of India's volume. So if you import anything into India, and I'll just take Mundra as an example just to kind of keep it simple. You import waste paper from say US or Europe into Mundra, right? The factory is in Rajkot, which is about 200 kilometers from Mundra. You do your custom clearance, everything in the port of Mundra. Once the box is custom cleared, so the cargo with the container goes to Rajkot at the importer's premises. It can be a warehouse or it can be a factory, depending if he's a trader or an end consumer, right? And the cargo gets de-stuffed. That's the term we use, de-stuffing.
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 So taking stuff
stuffing
out of
and
the...
de-stuffing. So
Okay.
de-stuffing is import and stuffing is export. So the cargo is de-stuffed in Rajkot, which is 200 kilometers from Mundra, and the empty container has to be returned back to an empty container yard in the vicinity of Mundra port. That's how the global industry is. All the empty container yards are situated close to the port. So from the import segment, the box comes from Mundra to Rajkot, gets emptied, comes back empty. And this is what we call as a dry run, because there is no cargo in the container and it is a loss of yield to everyone.
The same happens for the export segment, as the empty container has to go from the port to the warehouse to be loaded. Dhruv analyzed the data, and this is key. He had the data because his family firm had become the largest container management company in India, handling close to 10% of India's volume for empty containers.
When we analyze the data in the earlier company, we realize that this is 80% of the scenarios are where the box is coming back empty from say Rajkot, and within 10-15 days the similar box is going to Rajkot for an export stuffing. And you're like, boss, that is a lot of wastage. And you asked me why MatchLog. I'm like, you're sitting on data, you're sitting on this problem, you've been doing this for the last 10 to 15 years. Why reinvent the wheel when you just have to fix a spoke or two? And that's when he said, okay, let's kind of tackle this rather than say, okay, let's go out there and let's find a problem to address.
Shipping has been around for decades, so this problem has been around for decades. So everyone knows about there's an empty container on the road somewhere. So what prevented it being solved earlier?
The intention.
That's it?
That's it. We know a lot of problems exist around us, but do you do something about it? No. People know about this problem. The container has been around since 1956. That's the first time the container voyage happened. So it's been around for 70, 80 years. But has anyone done anything about it? No.
I was relieved to learn that there are at least 3 other companies trying to solve this problem. While they might not be as environment focused as MatchLog, they are trying to reduce the cost of the dry run. We know that increasing revenue and cutting costs is basically what drives large companies. And that's what's led the world's largest shipping lines to want to provide door-to-door services, just like how airlines do it. And since Dhruv was already in the container business, he approached the shipping companies.
So we started doing trucking for them from a door-to-door perspective. It was new for them. We said, we have been doing trucking for the last 15 years. Let's help you in that. So we became transport partners to Hapag-Lloyd, to Maersk, to Costco, to CMA CGM, to MS.
And you were displacing their current providers?
They didn't have any providers because it was a new segment for them.
Okay. But somebody was providing that service to the customer,
Correct.
if not to the shipping line.
So MatchLog then decided to be an asset-light aggregator. So we went to the transport and said, okay, we will move the boxes on your behalf. We'll use your vehicles because we don't want to get into the entire ownership perspective. Right. And we ended up becoming India's largest platform from an asset-light aspect for trucking. So we are present in most of the ports in India, providing services mainly to the shipping lines to provide their end-to-end services. So that's how we developed a transport execution system, which gave you entire visibility on where your box is, has the documentation been done. We gave a track and trace facility.
And you do that how? Do you have like Internet of Things type tracking systems or?
No, we wish we could have had, but I think the transport industry is still grappling with technology.
MatchLog now works with the largest shipping line in the world. But the challenge is actually more at the domestic fleet end. See, 95% of India's fleet owners are small operators with 5 or fewer vehicles, very basic education, and a reasonably high capital barrier because it costs 35 to 40 lakhs to buy a truck. So MatchLog provided something they didn't get elsewhere: timely payments. And it worked with the fleet managers who gave them basic information of where the vehicles are going, the mobile numbers of the drivers, and the deal numbers. All of this combined to make a data goldmine.
And that all data came into our system. So we could track it on that basis. And we track it through the driver's mobile phone. So he has to give us a consent and then we track it during the journey.
So the mobile phones acts as a GPS?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And that we realized because every trip has a different trailer, every trip has a different driver. So driver, if he's driving for you or me today, may not drive on the next trip. So every trip we take a consent from the driver. The same vehicle may not do the same journey again. So even if you have a GPS integration with a provider, if he's not on MatchLog platform for the next trip, it doesn't matter. So we kept it simple. We said, let's build tech which is going to be used by the end user, which is currently the transporter. He has to show where he is, give a missed call. Don't want to reinvent the wheel, just missed call. And missed call today, any single person will give.
So he gives a missed call and that gives you his location.
Correct. For that trip. So moment the trip ends, the tracking ends. So it's not like we're tracking where he goes after the trip. It's just for the duration we track. So we kept the tech simple. We want people to use our tech. So the first segment we built is a transport execution system, TES, because TMS is a transport management system which a lot of products out there have a similar name.
MatchLog built a rules-based engine which has the type of vehicle, the size, the type of container, as well as the import-export dates. The fleet managers share this information on a simple Google form as they see an opportunity to make some money on their otherwise dry run. So they share this on your platform and then you have an algo that simply matches it. That's it. Dhruv explained that very few people challenge established norms of an industry. But it's not that hard if the right incentives are given.
What we realized in business and otherwise, end of the day, people want to make money. They want to support their family. I think it's a very noble cause.
But I think what happens is when a new technology comes along, a new way of doing business comes along, the old ones are reluctant to give up because they need to retrain and redeploy their sort of thing. And it's understandable. I agree with you.
I think that has been one of the reasons why we're successful. We are increasing the business of transporters, right? Because we're giving them additional revenue. So part of the journey has been to educate the industry that yes, we are an aggregator, yes, we have technology.
MatchLog had to go to the Transport Association to make some of this work.
The money is the same, right? Money speaks. So let's work it out. So that's when he started educating everyone. It's a win-win for all, right? You don't have to buy new vehicles for new business. You can sweat your asset better and make more money with the same asset base.
The largest shipping lines also like the math.
What about the drivers? Do they make money out of it? Yes, they make money out of it, right? For the same duration of trip or probably a day extra, they stand to make more money, right? That means they have to drive less to support the families because they're making more money just by an incremental trip. There's less fatigue for them, right? That's when we got a lot of support from the drivers, and the drivers pushed their supervisors and owners and say, boss, let's work with MatchLog, or let's ask them if they have a return load for us. If not, then we will do a fresh regular cycle. So transport community supported, right? And now we want to kind of scale up that. The box belongs to the shipping line. When a box comes to India, it stays for an average duration of 34 days. When we do a triangulation or a matchback or reuse, which is, can be used interchangeably at MatchLog, the turnaround time goes to 4 days, right? So 34 days to 4 days, which means that the shipping line could get an additional trip or at least half a trip with the same container. On an average, 400 grams per kilometer per ton gets emitted by our trailers, right? If you read reports, the transport segment is probably one of the top pollutants of carbon in the world, not just India. And if you can do anything to mitigate that or to reduce that, why not? Which you asked me, why are you doing MatchLog?
All these cost benefits translate to environmental benefits.
For every box that we are able to reuse from an import to an export, for a Mundra Morbi segment, we save close to 600 kilograms of carbon on a trip, right? That is the impact angle, that is the carbon angle that we are bringing at MatchLog, right? Today we can't measure that from a carbon credit story or a monetization story. We're not trying that as yet.
While we know carbon credits are not the solution which will save us from the climate crisis, it's good to see that MatchLog is taking its time to calculate and perhaps monetize the carbon credits too.
We're not trying that as yet, but all we're doing on our platform, we are measuring the emissions you're doing on a regular trip. And if you're triangulating the box through MatchLog, we are showing you how much carbon you've saved. That's.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you, but why aren't you measuring the carbon credit sort of?
We have tied up with two agencies who do this, as a main source of business, and they are working on norms as to, if it's a scope 3 emission, how do you, measure this? Is it actually the company who's going to get the benefit? Is it the shipping line who's going to get the benefit? Is it the transport who's going to get the benefit? Or is it MatchLog who's going to get the benefit?
Apart from the Transport Management Solutions, or TMS, MatchLog offers a couple of other products. One is called Stinder.
It's a matchback for containers. It's a matching for containers. I mean, we just
It's the Tinder of containers.
Swipe left for a 20-feet container, swipe right for a 40-feet container. But, it's when you have calls with VCs, and it's very serious till then, and, what do you do, what's TAM and what's whatever. And they said, and we introduced a product called Stinder. We know who the users are, right? When you get an innocent smile and when you get a very wicked smile, that, oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, we call it it's called a street turn finder. That's the European or American term for matchback.
Right.
So matchback, reuse, triangulation, street turn is the same thing. Different geographies have different meanings, but it's actually called a street turn finder. So we said Stinder is more to kind of.
Okay, cool.
MatchLog also offers a third product that helps with addressing the containers before they are reused.
Currently, we have 3 Misties in Morbi, in Vapi, and in Pune, which are the hubs for import and export in India. So the driver comes to a Misty. The import cycle from a shipping line perspective is closed because it's all procedures to close the import cycle, link it to an export cycle. So that happens at a Misty. The box is also certified whether it's fit for an export because it carries debris from the import segment, right? Could be damaged during destuffing. A forklift goes, the fork damages the panel of the box, or there's residue of chemical or oil or something. So that happens at a Misty. So the import cycle is closed. The CASA comes in where the container is assessed for damage, right? And that happens through a digital app. So we just take photos, we scan the door of the box. It takes through the OCR, it captures the container number, the size and type, and the gross weight, air weight of the box, which also helps in matching the entire thing. And everything is digital. This also reduces our carbon footprint because there is no paper involved. Otherwise, it's a typical guy going in the diary and saying, okay, any damage, like how you send your car for a service station, madam, aapka damage hai, whatever stuff. So this happens on CASA. So we have a TES, we have Stinder, and we have a third-party app which is called CASA. So CASA does all the assessments of the box, and it certifies whether the box is fit for an export. So tomorrow, if there's any dispute by the exporter or the importer saying, okay, the box is not fine or whatever, we say, boss, this is a time-stamped digital record of.
Right. MatchLog's business model is a 1 to 3% brokerage from supplying the containers to the shipping lines. The revenue from the matching service is a flat fee between 2 and 5,000 rupees per match.
So currently we're doing about 3 to 4,000 boxes of delivery, and out of which we're managing to triangulate 25% of those.
The match success rate will go higher once the shipping lines agree to container portability.
So you have to do MSC to MSC, hapagloid to hapagloid, Costco to Costco.
Okay. And why is that?
The owners, say of Maersk, of MSC, of Costco, are happy with their own segmentation. So I think it would come about in the next 12 months or 24 months, the portability of boxes.
MatchLog is on course to achieve a top line of 50 crores. Dhruv was not worried about others copying the idea.
But it's not just software, right? It's the fact that you have to go and make those connections on the ground.
Try implementing it. I keep telling everyone that. I said, you're more than welcome to try what we're developing. But I feel we are 2 to 3 years ahead of anyone else out there.
The company has raised $3 million in December 2021, including from Rainmatter. It turned down a buyout offer from a global shipping company during COVID. The team has grown to about 60 people. It's now aiming at a Series A fundraise sometime in 2024 for global expansion.
We want to build this up into a large global story. We wanted to become a norm in our industry that, let's matchlog this box. Like we said, let's Uber it or let's have a Bisleri. That's what we want to do. And then we think about a potential exit because it's an impact story. So it will be stupid of us to think of anything apart from growing the business right now.
Finally, I was curious about Dhruv's take on why it had taken so long for the industry to recognize the financial and the environmental cost of dry runs.
I think, Hansi, to be honest, awareness or lack of. I think when I was in school, college, the environment was never discussed. No one spoke about anything. No one spoke about their footprint. It was never a norm. Honestly, for me also, it's been about 5 to 10 years since I started being conscious about the environment. Maybe more to do with social media, with access to social media and people talking about it.
So all this content does have some good influence. I'm Hansi. Thank you for learning with me in the Climate Conversations.